Thanks for joining us for another conversation about hidden risks inside small businesses. Today, we're going to talk about vendor failure cascades, how small supplier choices turn local problems into systemic risk.
Quick hook. 2 short examples to set the scene. Example 1. A specialty packaging supplier decides to pause production for 2 weeks. It sounds minor, but it stops order fulfillment across 3 product lines, triggers missed SLAs with a key retail partner, and suddenly the company is paying expedite fees, issuing refunds, and scrambling PR. The root cause? Single source buying and an informal SLA buried in an email thread.
Example 2. A small marketing vendor with broad access to a firm's CRM misconfigures an integration. Customer contact data leaks to a public storage bucket. No one thought to limit access or require a basic security attestation. The result? Regulatory notices, client calls, lost deals, and legal bills that rack up faster than anyone expected. Those are the kinds of cascades we're unpacking today.
Jessica, Eddie, tell us briefly what each of you will be listening for today. Jessica?
I'll be looking at contracts and liability handoffs. In 2 sentences, who is responsible when something fails? What remedies exist, and whether termination or audit rights are realistic for a small vendor. If those boxes aren't checked, problems don't just slow you down, they expose the business legally and financially.
I'll focus on access, onboarding, and monitoring. Even low-risk vendors create high-risk pathways when they gain broad privileges. I'll be listening for account separation, least privilege, multi-factor authentication, and logging. The things that turn vendor access from a black box into something you can manage.
Great. Let's walk through the anatomy of a cascade using a simple 3-step scenario: single source dependency, an informal SLA, and poor onboarding. We'll trace legal, operational, and cyber impacts as we go. Jessica, start with single source. What does that do legally?
Legally, single-source suppliers concentrate risk. If the contract doesn't include service levels, contingency obligations, or clear liability caps, you're stuck with an all-or-nothing vendor. That means recovery options are limited, and the legal exposure when something goes wrong is higher. We see vague, commercially reasonable efforts language that looks fine until you need action.
Operationally, that single source becomes a single point of failure. Inventory, forecasting, and customer commitments all depend on one node. Eddie, how does that play into cyber risk?
Single-source vendors often have deep integrations, file transfers, API keys, admin accounts. If onboarding never established account separation or logging, you can't tell what changed or when. That turns an outage into a blind, noisy incident where containment is slow and remediation expensive.
Now, the informal SLA. It's typically an email that says, "We'll get to it soon," or an optimistic timeline hidden in negotiation notes. Jessica, what red flags should leaders watch for in those cases?
Red flags: missing uptime commitments, undefined response times, no escalation path, and no termination rights tied to performance. Also watch for one-sided indemnities where your business bears most of the cost if something goes wrong. Those are easy to miss when you're trying to move fast, but they matter when cascade costs appear.
From a technical lens, an informal SLA means no agreed incident response framework. Who notifies whom? Who has access to logs? Without that, a security or availability incident morphs into a blame game and recovery lags. Add to that poor onboarding, like shared admin credentials, and you have a recipe for contagion.
Let's pivot to fixes. Jessica, what contract and liability changes matter most for small businesses that don't have big legal teams?
Prioritize 3 contract items you can standardize. 1. Minimal SLA language. Define response and remedy windows for high-impact services. 2. Data handling and breach notification. Require prompt notification and cooperation. 3. Termination and contingency clauses. The right to cure, short exit windows for breaches, and an obligation to provide transition support. Those go a long way without being legal overkill.
On the technical side, start with access boundaries. Require vendor accounts with least privilege, enforce MFA, and prohibit shared credentials. Add basic logging and retention. Even simple audit trails tell you who did what. Ask for a short security attestation during onboarding. Do you use MFA? Do you encrypt backups? Do you separate test and production? If the vendor can't answer those, treat them as higher risk.
Operationally, small teams can use simple processes to reduce cascade risk. My short list: keep a vendor map, maintain a backup supplier list for critical nodes, and build a one-page incident playbook for each critical vendor that covers notification, escalation, and customer communication. Okay, time for triage and prioritization. You don't have to fix every vendor at once. Jessica, how do you score cascade risk quickly?
Use a simple 4-factor score: criticality to revenue or operations, single source status, access level, data or systems, and contractual protections. Score each vendor 1 to 5 on those factors, multiply or weight them, and rank the top 5 that could cause the worst cascades. Those are your 30 90-day targets.
I'd add a fast technical check for the top 5. Do they have separate accounts, MFA, logging, and an available security contact? That takes an hour per vendor and will quickly separate low-hanging fixes from systemic problems that need stronger action.
Let's turn that into a practical playbook you can start this week. First 30 days. Run a 2-hour vendor map with your leadership team. Identify top 5 critical vendors and require a written onboarding attestation for new or existing critical vendors. Jessica, contract templates?
Draft a 1-page vendor rider you can attach to smaller vendor agreements. Include response times, data handling, basic indemnity language, and a clause requiring cooperation for audits or forensic work. Keep it short so it's usable, not a negotiation trap.
For IT, deploy an onboarding checklist. Account creation, MFA, least privilege role, logging enabled, and an SSO or isolated account where possible. Require proof, a screenshot or a confirmation, before granting production access. That prevents the worst mistakes up front.
90-day actions. Renegotiate or add riders to the top 5 contracts. Set up monitoring alerts for those vendor integrations, and run a tabletop incident drill that simulates a vendor outage or breach. Doing those drills surfaces communication gaps before customers notice. Here's a rapid checklist. Repeatable steps your leadership team can assign this week to stop the next cascade. Schedule a 2-hour vendor map and invite the ops, sales, and IT leads. Identify your top 5 critical vendors by the scoring method Jessica suggested. Send a short onboarding attestation request to those 5. Require MFA and unique vendor accounts for any system access. Attach the 1-page vendor writer to new agreements. Run a 30-minute tabletop for one vendor scenario. Assign owners and calendar reviews every 90 days.
It sounds like a lot, but each of those items is doable on a calendar, not a budget. Small steps compound into real resilience.
And remember, monitoring is your friend. Even simple alerts on failed integrations, sudden volume spikes, or new admin logins will catch most cascades early. You don't need perfect telemetry. You need timely signals.
Final recap. Vendor cascades happen because routine decisions, single sourcing, informal SLAs, lax onboarding, accumulate. Fix the top 5 first. Standardize minimal contracts and onboarding, and enforce access controls. Those 3 moves buy a lot of resilience without overbuilding controls. For the hidden business risk briefing with templates, the vendor writer, and the 30 90-day roadmap we discussed, go to hiddenbusinessrisk.com. That's hiddenbusinessrisk.com. Everything we referenced is there to download and use. No other links, just the briefing. Okay, that's it for today. Jessica, Eddie, quick sign-off? One takeaway each?
One takeaway. Make contractual protections simple and standard. You'll be amazed how often clarity prevents escalation.
Mine. Limit vendor access from day 1 and require proof. Small technical controls stop big cascades.
Thanks for listening. If you found this useful, head to hiddenbusinessrisk.com for the briefing and templates. We'll be back with more practical ways to find and fix the risks that hide inside everyday business decisions. Okay, that's it for today.